Broadcasting from Millennium Student Center at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and online at UMSLradio.org. We are the voice of UMSL. We are UMSL Radio.
The opinions expressed on this program are the views of the host and not necessarily the views of the University of Missouri St. Louis or this station.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another installment of That Science and Nature Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Howard, and joining me this week, as always, the queen of tarantulas, Becky O'Neill.
How's it going?
Micromaster, Webster Heffern.
Hi, everyone.
And special guest this week, the head of UMSL Sustainability, Dr. Katy Mike.
Hi.
How are you, Katy?
I'm great. Thank you for asking.
So, for those of the listeners who may not know, who are you here at UMSL? I know you just kind of introduced your title,
Sure.
but...
Okay, so my name is Katy Mike Smaistrla. I go by Katy Mike as my first name, and I use she and her pronouns. And my official title is Sustainable Environmental and Energy Coordinator. And I work in the facilities department, actually, doing environmental initiatives here on campus.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we're very excited to have you join us, so thank you so much.
Yeah.
So it's been a month since our last show. The last show we actually had was with James and Jen about a month ago about gardening, which that was a fun episode. And then we had a big break because it was spring break, and then the grad students had a bunch of guest speakers, so we went offline for a little bit. But we're back now for a couple more weeks. And I just wanted to start out by talking about the eclipse that we had last week. It's not in the news because it already happened, but did we all get to see the eclipse?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you were next to me, Becky, so we were like the grad students in the biology department were largely together, but I don't know about everyone else.
Yeah, I got to see it.
Were you at UMSL?
I actually was at home at the time, so
Okay.
I just stepped out into my front yard, put on my glasses, and looked up at the sky.
Nice. How about you?
I got to hang out with the biology folks for just a little bit at the MSC patio, and then I actually went up to the roof of the parking garage.
Oh,
it was
nice.
great viewing up there.
Awesome.
Some of my coworkers were actually at the top of the SSB tower, and I think
okay.
that would have been even more excellent to have gotten up that high.
Nice. Are we scrapping the SSB tower? Is that like...
Yeah, it's
Okay.
coming down.
When is it coming down?
Pretty soon, actually. I think
Okay.
we're looking at May.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there going to be like a demolition crew with like dynamite and all that? Okay.
Not dynamite. It's not blowing up.
Okay.
It's more like collapsing inward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Are students allowed to come see this? I kind of want to watch the building get demolished.
Yeah, I think it'll be really fascinating to watch. There'll probably
Okay.
be a video and everything.
Okay, cool. That's not related to the eclipse, but still a cool, fun UMSL thing. All right, awesome. So we're going to do the news as we always do. Topic of the show this week is going to be all about environmental activism as Earth Day is coming up, and it's a very good, timely topic. And then we'll do Outside of Science, as we always do. But hopping right into the news, we're going to start our first story today. This comes to us from Smithsonian Magazine, and this is about why do we want to squish and squeeze things that are cute? Science has the answer, as it always often does. So some researchers at Yale University basically conducted this study with humans where they basically hooked up a bunch of fancy electrodes to their head and showed them a bunch of photos. They had basically 4 categories or classes of photos. So they had like cute baby animals, they had adult animals, they had cute babies, and then the cute babies kind of had 2 subclasses. So they had like babies with altered features, like really wide eyes and really chubby cheeks, and then like regular baby photos. And they basically compared what were the responses to all these photos. So kind of looking at their neurological activity and how are people responding behaviorally in terms of like, are they having this impulse to squeeze or like crush things? Not because they want to harm them, but just because it's sort of a neurological knee-jerk reaction, so to speak, to these things. And what they ultimately found was that it seems like the baby animals are kind of the winners there over just like the human babies, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing to find for them. Not too terribly surprising because everyone loves cute animals. But they found the cute baby animals kind of had the more higher responses neurologically speaking. So do we have any thoughts on cute things and responding to them neurologically?
I find it's kind of fun to quiz people about this because I asked my husband if he'd ever experienced cute aggression, and he hadn't. So he was like, "What are you talking about?"
Okay.
So I don't know if everyone has experienced it.
Okay.
I have.
I've definitely experienced it.
What has kind of triggered it?
I know my cats trigger it.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
They're both very, very cute animals, and you have that instinct to come up and pet almost aggressively, and but I think it helps with the instinct to play with the cat as well.
Yeah, that's true. I'm definitely a big animal lover in terms of cute things. I think rodents are cute. I know a lot of people don't, but they have like the big beady eyes, and I don't know. I think they're adorable, but I know that's like not a popular opinion.
I mean, flying squirrels are extra adorable.
They are. My mom said they were ugly, and that hurt me a little bit back when I was doing research at my master's institute. She's like, they're so ugly. I'm like, oh, how could you say that about my research subject?
They're so cute. Though it seems like they would bite you if you tried to squeeze them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But like I find mice cute too. So like the woodland mice you find. I mean, rats are a little, not so much because they can be a little dirty and not in the most fun places. But that's my thought.
So cute is a subjective term then?
Yeah, cute can be subjective. How about you? Do you have?
This immediately made me think of charismatic megafauna, right?
Okay.
Like maybe we have like the another term like that comes up in the environmental movement, like the extra cute. Everything has big eyes these days, and everything though I feel like a lot of cartoons and stuffed animals, the eyes are always ginormous.
Yes, I imagine it probably helps them self-merch.
Yeah.
I had to guess.
Well, in animal behavior, Jeremy, do you ever cover neoteny?
It doesn't sound familiar. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so a lot of baby creatures often have proportionally larger heads, larger eyes, things like that. Or we call these features neotenous features. So if you're trying to sell things and make them look like babies, make them neotenous, give them the big eyeballs and the cute little button nose and the big old noggin.
Okay. Yeah, maybe they cover it in lecture. We don't cover it in lab. That would be a cool lab to do though. Like, what is your reaction to like these cute things? Like, I could do this experiment in animal behavior lab and see like what my students' responses are. Maybe I'll make a note of that for next year.
Yeah, there's an argument that when we breed like pugs and dogs like that we're trying to make them more neotenous. Though I don't think they look very cute, even if they do have big heads and eyes and little noses.
Oh, my dogs have big eyes and little noses. I have those types of dogs. They're so cute to me. So cute is subjective, I guess.
And it could be the neoteny that's built into them.
Yeah, when you brought up the neoteny thing, Becky, I thought of Grogu from Mandalorian. I'm like,
Yes,
it's
totally.
literally a baby animal that has giant eyes.
That is a great example.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to the next story. So this comes to us from NPR, and this is all about, do you love seafood? Here's how to eat responsibly. This is a great sustainability story, which is very appropriate for this week. So some authors basically did some breaking down of overfishing in the United States and how this is a destructive thing sustainability-wise, and what are ways that we could potentially mitigate this as consumers to enjoy our seafood, but also do it in a way that doesn't, lead or continue to snowball these environmental impacts. So the two big things they talked about in this are asking yourself two big questions, or the one thing they said is asking yourself two big questions. I'm getting ahead of myself. And the first is is the fish that you are gonna buy, is it pole or line caught versus just being like caught in a giant net, which has a lot of bycatch and a lot of negative impacts that way. The other one is the fish caught in the United States, so it was probably raised locally at like a fishery or something along those lines, or fished along the United States coast. So from that angle, it would be not leading to the overfishing as much. And I didn't know this, but apparently according to the NOAA, United States fisheries have not really been overfished since 2022. So apparently we've been pretty good about that on the fish front, at least for the United States. I don't know about other countries. That's just what the report says. Do we like seafood? Are we big seafood people on the panel?
I love seafood.
Okay.
Yeah, seafood's delicious.
Do you have certain seafood in particular you like?
I'll eat most anything.
I'm pretty bad. I like the top of the food chain stuff, and I know that's exactly what I should not be eating. I like swordfish. I like tuna. I like, but I like smaller fish like mackerel, and then I love like crustaceans. So.
That was one of the things that struck me, is that they didn't mention any of the human impacts in the story, and that might be another reason to consider fish caught in the U.S. because of our labor laws, and there's no slavery involved with some of the crustaceans that we might find.
I know I've plugged it before, but read Outlaw Ocean if you haven't.
Mm-hmm. Or watch Seaspiracy.
What's Seaspiracy?
It's a documentary on this very topic.
Okay.
Yeah,
is it on streaming? Is it okay?
Netflix, yeah.
Okay.
And then photographer Kevin Bales did a really nice book about modern day slavery, and shrimping. The shrimp industry is a big one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
The number of people that have to peel that shrimp to get it to us. So eat locally farmed shrimp, I guess, if you can.
Huh.
Apparently there are local farms here in Missouri for crayfish, crawfish,
Oh,
That's
okay.
cool.
and shrimp, like a little further outside of St. Louis, central
I did
Missouri.
not know that. So
Yeah.
where do you find this locally farm? Where can we buy it?
I guess at the farmers market, says they ship it to restaurants and whatnot. So yeah, who would have thought that? I mean, it's I think it's grown in like swimming pools or large tanks, but kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah, in undergrad in Pennsylvania, we went to a fish hatchery where we got to see like the giant like pools with all the fish, and they're definitely overstocked in terms of just like they need to get them out a little faster. But it was kind of insane to be like, there's just so many fish in one area that we kind of like, they bring out to a lot of like streams and rivers and stuff. It was mostly for like fishermen and stuff to kind of restock like trout and those sorts of things, and because Pennsylvania's got a big hunting culture. But yeah, that was really insightful to see because I never really thought about that from like how do we restock these things that clearly we're overfishing for. So yeah. I myself, I feel like I'm not that fish savvy. Like I eat tilapia and even like salmon. I know salmon's less or more environmentally impactful than tilapia, but yeah, I feel like I haven't eaten that many other things. Like I've tried calamari, it's fine. I've tried some other things, it's fine. I don't think I'm like the biggest seafood person. I think I like fish. I don't know about seafood.
I can't do calamari anymore. They're too smart. I read a book and it just
Fair.
changed me about how I feel about them. So,
Oh,
and
no.
it was a fiction. It was remarkably bright creatures.
Oh.
So worth a read if you feel like crying. You've got time to read fiction.
Good summer book
I
activity.
literally just had calamari the other night, so now I feel guilty if they're really that bright.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But oftentimes it's not even calamari. The restaurant will swap it with pig intestine.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Wait, what?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And they can get away with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the same texture. And the
Oh,
same
wow.
kind of. So I guess look for the suckers. Make sure it's calamari.
Interesting.
Oh my goodness.
Now I'm wondering if
Disturbing.
I'm wondering if I ate pig intestine now.
So one problem I've had, because I was briefly on like a seafood watch kick, like, yes, I love seafood. I want to eat the most sustainable seafood. And I found that like the pole caught versus long lining, the people at the restaurant don't know. If I ask them, they have no clue how their fish was caught.
It's so true.
And it kind of took the wind out of my sails. I was like, I don't have the tools to, other than species. And there's a lot of fraud in the seafood industry, so the species you're eating might not be the one that's on the menu. Yeah, and I just felt a little defeated. Like, I can't actually get the information I need to know if I'm eating this sustainable food or not.
And that's one thing in the environmental movement that we say is look for the labels. And here in this article, it literally says, don't be swayed by the labels might be lying. So I thought that was really interesting because usually we look for like a third-party verification or somebody else that's going in to grade, the practice. And
I mean,
that might
maybe
not be
if
the
you're
case here.
like in the fanciest sushi place in San Francisco or something, you might get that information. But
Right.
yeah, if you're at your local St. Louis seafood joint, they don't know if it was long lined.
Probably not. You know who does though is Monterey Bay Aquarium. Shout out to them for their seafood watch. They have a really nice little foldable pocket card you can put in your pocket in case you're curious about which species to eat.
And we were lucky enough.
Yes, we were. Go ahead, Becky. I was about to say the
You
same
already
thing.
are aware of
Go
this.
for it, Jeremy.
Oh, I was just going to say, so the biology department, specifically a lot of the ecology and evolution students are part of the Harris Center, which is a big conservation, entity within the biology department that puts on a gala every year honoring, well, maybe not every year, almost, maybe we'll say every 2 years roughly, putting on sort of a ceremony to highlight and honor one big biologist who has devoted their career to some kind of conservation. So this year we had Julia Packard. She's like one of the big heads of the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and
yay.
she came and to the gala
Last
Tuesdays ago, or last week, and gave a speech and everything except the award on behalf of the aquarium and all that. It was really cool, and she gave like a really good talk, like mini sort of acceptance speech about sustainability and fisheries and all that stuff. And they had the cards you were discussing. We got to hand them out to people, so that was really cool.
All right. Well,
That's
that's old
cool.
news to you, but that's immediately what I thought of.
Yeah, it was good for the listeners though.
And I got to see Celine Cousteau speak, Jacques Cousteau's granddaughter.
Cool.
And she also fielded a question about this exact same issue and had a lot of the same things to say. Her main point actually was just lower on the food chain, smaller, tends to be much more sustainable. Oysters apparently are very sustainable. They reproduce like mad.
Okay. Okay.
What about tuna? Because like canned tuna is a big thing. Is tuna good, bad?
Tuna's pretty big, so they just don't reproduce fast enough.
Okay.
So it's hard for their population to recover.
And tuna is not just one species, and there's a lot of variation in size and fishery status for different tuna species. Like if I knew it was bluefin, I probably would not eat it, for example.
Okay. I just like tuna is like the low on the totem pole cost wise because like what poor people buy if you want like fish because it's very dirt cheap. Though eating a lot of canned tuna is also not good for other reasons. But yeah, I was just curious about that.
What about fishing for your own? Anybody fish here?
Oh no.
I did a lot more as a kid. And fresh trout is pretty good. Like if you go to a little fish farm, or like Jeremy was saying, although a lot of the trout that we have in the United States are not native, they have been established. People brought them over from Europe back in the day, like in the 1800s in barrels. For brown trout, I was amazed to learn this. Like, how did you manage this? Taking them to the Americas. So there's that whole issue there that they're non-native fish, but I do like some fresh trout. And we do have native trouts too, so don't bash on all the trout.
Yeah, I go deep sea fishing when I'm on vacation. That's always fun, and that is, of course, line caught, so that's nice.
I grew up fishing as a kid, so that's why I still
Okay.
have not gone 100% vegetarian. That I every so often like to eat my grandpa's fish or something like that.
Okay.
Kind of feels good. I also asked that question because I'm interested in maybe wondering how many people you have seen fishing in Bug Lake.
Oh,
and what you
yeah.
think about Bug Lake as a fishing hole.
I think it's weird that people go there. Like
I see people fish in there. I don't know if they catch anything.
that's the one reason I'm like, is there anything actually in there?
Well, and I worry with slow-moving water in a small space like that. Like, are you at a higher likelihood for parasites or getting, like, think of all the lawn products we use. They're all going to wash right into Bug Lake. So what is the pesticide load or the herbicide load of the fish you're eating?
Oh, and speaking of pesticides, I just read an article that pesticides can help encourage the bad mutations for antibiotic resistance in bacteria. So if you are consuming pesticides, that's not a good thing.
So I wouldn't eat anything I caught out of there.
Okay. We'll move on to the last article now for the news. This comes to us from Science News, and it's kind of interesting, I guess, psychological / sort of sociology study. It's after being insulted, writing down your feelings on paper, then getting rid of it reduces anger. So some researchers at Nagoya University basically conducted this cool social experiment where they had a bunch of individuals write some kind of stance or opinion about a social topic. It didn't really matter what the social topic was, but they sort of turned them in and got feedback on it. And the feedback was all the same because that was kind of the point of the experiment, to manipulate this. All the feedback basically, let me read the sentence of what they wrote. So basically to get the people that wrote opinions angry, all of the people who received their information then wrote back to them and they said, I cannot believe an educated person would think this. I hope this person learned something while at university. And if you were to receive that information, you probably would be pretty upset because you wouldn't feel super great about yourself. And then what they asked the participants to do once they received that information was, one, ask if they were angry, which, spoilers, all of them were. And then two, they basically had them have a choice. So one group could either put the piece of paper with their rejection information in a drawer, or they could throw it in the trash. And the other group had the decision of putting the piece of paper in a box or putting it in the paper shredder. And basically they asked them, like, what did you choose and how did you feel? And they found the people who threw the paper in the trash or put it in the paper shredder ultimately felt better, like, emotionally in terms of their mental health and how they sort of dealt with the anger.
Didn't they have to, like, vent on the piece of paper, like respond? I think that was part of it. You have to vent on your piece of paper.
Oh, yes. That's an important detail. So they had to express those negative thoughts onto the, channel it into the paper. That was an important piece I missed. Thank you, Becky.
All good.
Yeah, I thought that was...
As much as I want to just throw reviewer number 2 in the shredder.
Yeah, when I read this, I felt it so hard of all, like, the negative feedback I've gotten for, like, manuscripts or just other feedback. And most of the time it is with good intent. It's just sometimes the way it's said is not always the nicest, and you don't always feel, the best about yourself. So I really felt for this study, and it's just nice. I was like, oh, I would love to just, like, crumple up the paper and, like, light a match and then burn it and just have it sort of go away.
Have you tried it?
I have not. I feel like I don't really have a good area to, like, light a piece of paper on fire in my apartment. or in my apartment complex.
I think you can just throw it away too.
Yeah, but I want it to be more like intense
Drama,
than that.
okay.
Yeah.
Ritualistic.
Yeah. The paper shredder feels good though. Like I would probably bring it to school and then like put it in the paper shredder.
To me, this is almost like a nod to Buddhist or Taoist thinking, where it's like letting go, the power of letting go. And I'm one who never lets go of anything. I will hold on to anything for dear life. I am a hoarder. I've always believed in the power of holding on to all these things and then overshadowing them someday. But now I read this study and I'm like, well, maybe I should try like just getting rid of the bad stuff sometimes. And it might make moving forward a little easier.
Well, and they said this was inspired by a Japanese tradition. I'm going to try my best to say it. Hakida Shisara, where it's like, yeah, you write it down and get rid of it. Getting rid of the negative emotions and energy.
Yeah, it says it's in relating to like purging or spitting something out, or in the Sara part of the phrase is a dish or a plate. So funnily enough, last fall there was like a smash a plate thing at UMSL, and I remember messaging the grad students like, hey, does anyone want to come do this with me? And no one took me up on it. And I was like, I want to go smash a plate if I'm not angry. But the idea was like we literally wrote like what are your like anxieties and fears and like problems right now on this plate and a marker, and then we walked in a tent with safety equipment on and just like threw the plate on the ground. And let me tell you guys, that was one of the most cathartic experiences I had, was just smashing a plate as hard as I could on the ground. So
sounds good.
I would recommend if they ever do it again, they might do it for finals this semester, next semester. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. It seems very like childish, but it's actually a lot of fun.
I think that's a built-in response that we have, like physiologically. Like there's just something about like release. Mm-hmm. And even this made me think of the first story as well, like the way that we have these like built-in responses. We just need to do something, I think. The way that your brain is triggered to just like immediately respond to something, and then your frontal lobe has to kick in to say, well, wait, don't respond in that way. I think there's a lot there.
Yeah, I definitely think there's benefit to having controlled, like scheduled, I guess, burst of anger. Like if it's done in like a controlled environment, like when it's like when you figure out a healthy way to channel it out is what I'm trying to say.
Not driving in a car.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I wrote down. Like, what are the implications for road rage?
Yes.
Like, how do we get over the things that like make us so mad or make us need to release, and how can we do that in a smart and humane way?
Yeah.
The yoga teacher in me is definitely all about this. Like both of these two articles, I was right on with it. Like talking about how we respond to trauma and thinking about, how do we process emotion, whether it's the cute aggression or the like rage. Like what do we do with that? How do we process it?
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk all about environmental activism. So stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Dan Girth, Director of Student Services in UMSL's Honors College.
And I'm Lana Jabbar, biology major, class of 2026, and a student in the Honors College. And we're here to let you know that even if you're already a student at UMSL, it's not too late to become part of the Honors College.
That's right. If you have 4 or more semesters left and a 3.2 GPA, you can still earn the Honors Certificate.
As a student, my favorite part of the Honors College is the community and all the events they host every semester.
For me, teaching honors classes is always the best part of my day. I love being in small discussion classes, helping students learn from each other's perspectives. If you like small discussion classes and writing more than standardized testing, please apply to Honors.
To start the application process, you can visit the Honors College online or just call Dan at 314-516-7197. We hope to see you next year.
Okay, and we're back. Now it's time for Topic of the Show, where we talk about some sort of longer form discussion topic that I pre-select. This week, in honor of Earth Day coming up, we're going to talk all about environmental activism. So Katy Mike, we have you here as our lovely guest to provide your awesome insight. Just as sort of a quick definition for everyone, environmental activism, just give it like a really nitty-gritty definition, is just any action that's taken to protect or aid in the environment. So Earth Day, we did an episode last year, if you remember around this time, Becky, about Earth Day, sort of its history, what does it mean today, what are the challenges today. So I think this is kind of a good, almost like 1 year anniversary of that show. But environmental activism is an interesting movement because it kind of comes from counterculture, but it is with good intent. So I just kind of want to start the conversation off with, what does environmental activism mean to you, or what does it look like to you? Not necessarily like the dictionary definition, but how do you envision it?
Any of us? I envision Jane Fonda. I envision her up there, like, speaking her mind and getting arrested on the front steps of, I forget where it is that she's always getting arrested, but somewhere in Washington, D.C., for some major issue that she feels needs more attention. That's what I think of when I think of environmental activism. And I know that's a very limited viewpoint of it, but that is the first image that comes to mind.
Yeah, I have something similar, and I kind of wonder if this might be an age thing, where I think of ELF, the Earth Liberation Front, which is a terrorist organization. Yeah. And I don't think that's what we mean here when we say, what does activism look like to you? So I'm wondering if I'm just old, because I'm not sure that's what other people think when they hear activism.
Yeah, I think for me it's kind of a mix, because there is like the political component of like you have to push things forward and, you know, get politicians to vote for these things and care about these things. But there is still like the counterculture movement of its birth, where I think of kind of like the hippie/rebel a little bit of it, even though I know like I've met environmental activism people that are not in any way, shape, or form that definition, but that's admittedly like what I kind of think of like stereotype-wise.
Okay, so I would have to link this to ethics, right? So if ethics are what you do when no one's looking, I would say environmental activism is what you do when someone is looking and it's hard to do, but you decide to do it anyway. And I think that can take the form of small action, or it could be action with a capital A, as in a Greenpeace movement or something like that, which I'm of that age too, where I think of those things as well. Yeah. The Greenpeace, tying yourself to a tree, like Julia Butterfly Hill, you know, and some of those heroes and sheroes that I grew up learning about and aspiring to be like.
Yeah, and I think these days maybe folks want, like the first thing you said, they want an environmental activist like ethic. Am I doing the right thing for the environment? As opposed to the more extreme, like actually spiking a tree, don't do that, it's dangerous, or things like that.
So in terms of environmental activism, this might seem like a silly sort of redundant question, but I think it's important to sort of hash it out. But like, why does it matter that we have environmental activism in the first place? Like, what purpose does it serve?
I mean, to me, the major end game, I think, should be policy change, both at a governmental level and at a personal level. So it serves the purpose of getting people to change their individual behaviors to treat the environment better, and then also serves the purpose of getting the government to enact policies that will ideally, like cleaner energy and protecting wetlands, which we unfortunately have lost a lot of that protection.
Yes, as we learned on the wetlands episode like a month ago or 2 months ago.
So yeah, anything that can get the policies to change of individuals in the government.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my idealized activism, it would be like the Natural Resources Defense Council, things like that.
What is the Natural Resources Defense Council?
NGO that does a lot of like legal lawyer policy work and activism.
Okay.
I would have to say that I think, first, at the state level, there's some great environmental law groups around town, so that's even more localized. I think that's great. So that's one thing I'd throw out there.
Are there any in Missouri that you can think of?
There is the environmental law. It's a defense fund, I think.
Okay.
Is what there's an acronym. There's an acronym for everything, I feel like. But to answer the original question, I would say that why is activism important? Well, the world is run by the people who show up, right? So when we show up, we have a chance to create the world we want and help build in our own idea and provide that input. So, and I really have come to think that that's what we need to do is be a part of that creation process.
Okay. Nicely said. I kind of think of it a little bit how I think about advocating for kids with special needs. They're there, but there's like, it's hard for them to advocate for themselves, which is kind of like Mother Nature, like she doesn't have a voice. And I know that's a somewhat oversimplification for special needs stuff, but I have a younger brother with autism, so this is kind of where I'm coming from. So like nature, like there's no one really to advocate for it, so we kind of need to do it to, produce a better earth and, move things forward. Same with like special needs rights, where like they have much more limited communication ability. So it's kind of, that's how I view activism with sort of the green movement.
The Lorax? You speak for the trees?
Yeah, speak for the trees.
Have you ever participated in any of the deep ecology rituals or workshops where you would actually be the tree and you'd have to provide the perspective of a tree? It's called a Council of All Beings. Oh, it's kind of a fun practice in that someone gets to be the tree, someone gets to be the wolf, someone gets to be the ant, somebody gets to be, and so it's a council, literally a circle of all the creatures, not just the human ones, and that's how the decision process is made. Like it's, you get if you have to embody the tree or whoever it might be, then that's lending your voice to their concerns.
Okay. So it's kind of like environmental empathy because you're playing as different roles in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how does like the wolf and the ant work? They're just sort of like different players in the forest?
Yeah, to resolve the conflict or have the help in the decision-making process.
Okay.
So you get to hear from all of the different perspectives.
Okay.
Joanna Macy, look her up. She's
Okay.
the deep ecologist thinker to think of. But I think, your idea of lending our voice to those that need it or may not have access to the room in which the voices are heard is really important. And I think that all has to do with our power structures, right? It all comes down to hierarchies of power and patriarchy and all capitalism and all the things that we are probably not fans of.
Yeah. Yeah. The things we partake in to survive but don't necessarily benefit us, I guess.
There's what's it called? The HEMES principles, I think, of democratic organizing. If anyone's heard of this is a New Mexico thing, so I got to learn about it when I lived in New Mexico. But it's for environmental justice is how it started, but all these folks got together and wrote these principles of quote unquote democratic organizing. And that's also a really good place to start for activism and organizing, I think. It's a very short document, but yeah, if you haven't seen it, look up the HEMES principles as another resource.
Do we, I guess the four of us ourselves, do we consider ourselves environmental activists?
In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. I find that I'm really good at activism for some things and not as good at it for other things. Okay. So I tend to be more active in the things I'm good at.
I would agree with that. I'm very good about informing people about how much water what they're eating is consuming. So that I try to be a good activist about water, but I'm not a great activist for a lot of the other topics.
Yeah, I feel like I'm educated on everything, but in terms of like execution, like I haven't really gone to like a lot of protest or contacted my government official. Those things would probably like push the ball forward in terms of those movements, but I'm very like aware of things and I vote obviously for green initiatives and support those things. But yeah, admittedly I haven't like done a lot, I feel like I'm more educated on it, but I haven't done as much action, if that makes sense.
I think that's pretty common, though. I think that most people probably do know more about these topics than we give them credit for. They just haven't taken the steps to like go, take that final step to make the phone call or whatever it might be. In my work in sustainability, I find that all the time. Most people care. Most people would like to see the right thing happen, but are they actually going that extra step to whatever it might be? Get the paper or the plastic bottle in the recycle bin? That's where there's that moment of disconnect where that final step is a little bit harder. And I guess referencing my work, I don't consider myself in activism in my day job. In my personal life, maybe, yeah. In my day job, though, more of that, the word I'm more often using these days is an intrapreneur.
Okay.
So like an entrepreneur goes out and starts their own thing and creates something outside of what already exists, whereas an intrapreneur is having to do that same process within something that very much does exist, trying to change the culture of the institution you work within.
Is it business related, or is it just any sort of organization? It
can be any sort of organization.
Okay.
So.
I haven't heard the term. Cool.
Yeah, I think I definitely fall into that. Like, if you put a ballot initiative in front of me that says, should we have plastic bags? I'm going to say no. But am I going to get all the signatures to get that on the ballot? Probably not. Yeah. But I am really good at advocating for bugs within my circle and with the different activities I do. So I find, it's just weird.
I also think of it as how you show up as the person who's the voice in someone else's head, right? So like maybe your friends might think of, they're not going to squash that bug. So they think, oh, Becky would say, Becky always says. And I remember when I first started learning about all of this stuff in high school and early years of undergrad, some of who my peers were and the voices in my head and what they were telling me to do. And, you know, what a dirtbag climber would do and leave no trace when you're out on the trail and all those kinds of things. And those voices in my head helped me act a certain way. And then I think about today, who are the voices in the head and how those folks show up. So maybe that's one way of thinking about it.
Yeah, that's cool.
So maybe you are an activist to someone else.
Yeah, I guess maybe in small ways, because I was a Boy Scout and we learned a lot about like leave no trace and respecting nature in terms of like hunting and fishing and wildlife and just observing nature and stuff. And for me, it comes more of like not so much like what was this one person saying and the lessons they instill. It's more of just like I really enjoyed being in nature and like participating in this the natural world, and I would like for the future generations to experience the same thing that I did or have those like opportunities like I did. So it's sort of like a more like abstract way of thinking about it, because there's not like one person I can point to. It's more of just like I know other people will enjoy this. I would like them to also enjoy it. So
like a general sense of a pleasant feeling,
yeah,
right?
Exactly,
when we associate a pleasant feeling, we feel good about something, and that makes us want to do it more.
Right.
So maybe we need to make environmental activism fun or easy or popular.
Yeah.
Celine Cousteau actually was speaking on somewhat similar lines about how the activists in particular, there needs to be this focus on the mental health state of the activists, because it can be so discouraging at times.
Eco-anxiety is real.
Yes.
Yes.
So the anxiety comes from just you're fighting this uphill battle, or?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's like in the background, like, cool, the earth is ruined and we're all going to die.
I do hear that a lot, unfortunately.
How do I keep fighting? Is that kind of what you're...
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's actually, that term eco-anxiety or climate anxiety has now been like accepted into the dictionary, or how they track those words or those phrases that are being used. That's a new one that just made it in. So.
Yeah. One of the supplementary articles that I just looked up when prepping for the show was talking about like generations and how much sort of each generation is concerned or cares about like climate change and the environment and stuff like that. And it seems like millennials and Gen Z kind of skew a little higher and have that, like you said, climate anxiety, like, those feelings unlike previous generations. Though part of me wonders from that article is if that's like social media related, because we're just so much more exposed to those ideas, and like millennials and Gen Z grew up with social media. Well, millennials like kind of integrated into it, and then other generations maybe not so much. So I wonder if that's a part of it, but I also wonder if it's just like there's more awareness about the issue overall. So
maybe one thing that's weird to me, especially when I talk to like much older folks than me, is they've been around enough that alive on the planet long enough they can say, oh yeah, there were way more fireflies when I was a kid. Oh yeah, this was different. And then some folks that do that still deny climate change, even though they can see it. Like they can see the effects. And by climate change, I don't just mean temperature change. I'm talking about pollution and habitat degradation, all of it. So I don't know. I worry that our baseline for what's normal is shifting with every generation. So even though you have like Gen Z and us millennials that are really worried about climate change, it's really our parents and grandparents that have seen the big changes and know what it used to be like on the planet. I don't know.
I think
I'm rambling.
I've seen the firefly populations go down though, even in my short lifetime, and I've definitely seen the temperatures go up. So I don't know if it's restricted so much to their generation, but I can see them having seen more of it for sure.
yeah, I mean, I guess the longer you live, the more you would have seen logically.
And the more often you'd be in the room to make decisions about that too. So maybe that's another piece of it, why there's so much more anxiety, because if you're not in the room to make decisions of because you're still in school or you're still, getting started in your career, then then of course you're going to be more anxious about it because you don't have as much control over it.
Right.
That makes sense.
I get very anxious watching the water levels in the Colorado River, let me tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're going down?
Always down.
Okay.
They have one rescue year. I was like, please do not take this year for granted. What did they do? They took the year for granted. They reduced the protection status of the river. They it was just so silly. And of course now they had no snow again this year, and it's going back down again. What did you expect?
Yeah, the biggest change I've sort of noticed is just like the amount of developed land. Like I haven't noticed so much about like the fireflies and the animals decreasing, just as like there's just so much more development now of like, oh yes, I remember like in my hometown Virginia, like growing up, like there used to be these big fields, and then they became lots and stroads and like shopping malls and stuff. And I'm like, oh man, this is much different than what I remember as a child. So I don't like, obviously there's lots of, bad implications about urbanization and stuff, but just conceptually, it's almost like a little sad. I've just lost that, like the native land we had. That's where I come from.
Do you write any of this down? Do any of you do any journaling or nature journaling or record keeping?
Personally,
phrenology?
I do not.
No?
I mean, I use iNaturalist, but those observations aren't accompanied with like an opinion. Like, I haven't seen this for years.
Yeah, well, I feel like as scientists, we have to take the emotion out of it to be more analytical and so on and so forth.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to take the personal side out. We can't say, I haven't seen this for years because I'm just one data point.
I think you can say it.
You can say it? Okay.
You just can't write it when we publish it.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it back to that second article, or the third article then, about, writing things down. And maybe that's helpful. Like, that's something that I encourage my students to do. I teach sustainability, too, at Maryville, and that's something that I encourage everyone to do, is keep a journal so that when it's your grandkids, you can say for sure, like, there were more fireflies, I remember, because so that's something I'm trying to do in my own life.
Yeah, I have noticed in searching just like the literature, like older literature, so like from like the 30s, 40s, 50s, and the 1900s, it was actually, they had a lot more like personal opinions and feelings they could inject, because it was just sort of like almost like a nature diary, versus today it's more like a, I did this study, this is the data, this is the results. And I kind of like seeing the like nature diary entries, because they're cool like little historical windows into how things were way back when, versus, not that I'm discrediting all the hard work scientists do for studies, but it doesn't have that same element or historical context that I like of the older stuff.
I've noticed that documentaries are picking up some of that now. Like, if you look at the behind the scenes it was either Frozen Planet, Planet Earth, or Blue Planet. But it was the behind the scenes, they interviewed the scientists that like showed them the Gentoo penguin colony where they were filming. And this guy's talking about how this population he's been studying his whole career is going extinct, and he like bursts into tears. And I like can't help myself when I see scientists do that. But this also happens in Chasing Coral, another documentary where they see all this bleaching and that by the end they're all crying. So I'm seeing more media showing these raw responses from scientists. And I don't know about other people, but they hurt when I watch them. Like, I can't imagine having a study system like that just disappear while you're looking at it.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot.
Well, that's grief, isn't it? And that's a raw emotion the body needs to process. Yeah.
So one thing I want to mention, emotions is a good way to segue to this, is the lack of emotion or interest, which is apathy. So a lot of people, know about stuff, but maybe don't really like care about the environment. And because they don't really care, they're not going to engage with the environmental activism movement in any way, shape, or form. So what are our thoughts on just people being apathetic to it?
When I meet people that are apathetic, they often have some other cultural belief system that's intertwined in that makes them think that the earth is ours and the resources here are not going anywhere.
I get very frustrated with the apathy, because I'm like, if everybody were apathetic, it'd all be that much worse and going downhill that much faster. And I don't think a lot of, like, in the cases where there's not an intertwined belief system, if there are such cases, it's like, don't you understand? We could either have 40 good years left on the planet or 100 good years left on the planet, and at least that choice is still in our hands.
Yeah, I'm going to steal something that Jen Voss was on the last episode for gardening, and she brought this up with one of the news stories. I don't remember which, but she talked about this idea that humans don't view themselves as part of nature. We view ourselves outside of nature, and we just sort of use nature to get what we want out of it. And because we have that disconnect, we don't really care what happens to it. It's just a resource for us to exploit. And until you can sort of like repair that connection, that's how you kind of can fix. Well, I don't know if it's necessarily about apathy, but she was making that point, and I'm connecting this to the apathy point in terms of, I think you have to sort of repair that connection to get people to actually care that like the nature thing is it's not just over there in the mountains or in the field, like it is technically all around you, even in an urban ecosystem.
I wonder if that's a top predator philosophy. Like, I wonder if it's.
I'm sure that
restricted
comes
to
in
humans.
psychology-wise.
Yeah, but I think if they had the power, lions would be just as awful as we are. They just don't have the power.
I mean, maybe. I'm thinking of the history of conservation in the United States, and like a bunch of our wetland conservation, that's from Ducks Unlimited. That's from hunters. So I don't know. Maybe it is more what Jeremy's saying, where you need that connection.
You need to be a part of the circle of the council of all beings.
Yes.
Yes. Even if you're hunting the ducks,
Yeah.
you still want sustainability for the ducks and to have healthy wetlands and have that connection to nature.
To go back to what you said earlier, though, I think it does have to do with your other belief systems that are closely entwined. It's not just apathy. And I think that's why the lions, the apex predators, might not do the same thing, because they may not have the same entwined beliefs that we do, whether it be, a capitalist or, a certain culture that we exist within, or maybe it's religious doctrine or whatever that might be. It's just because there's something else involved there, or there's nothing else there, and it's perhaps just a simple lack of observation, or that there's a moving too fast for anything to be there in the first place. Because I think that happens a lot, that often our so much of our world is automated that we don't even have the time to slow down and think about the decisions we're making. Mm-hmm. So there's no need to feel one way or the other. Apathy doesn't even come into play because it's a moot point.
I think sometimes when it does come into play, though, I've seen it almost become so defensive that the apathetic individual will start coming up with almost falsified data against the well-known solution. Like, I've seen some articles that are just ripping on solar power, for instance, and how awful solar power is for the environment. And I'm like, and then how good coal is. I'm like, wait a second, this is clearly not correct. This is an article I read in Fox News just the other week. And it's clearly not correct, but it's a group of individuals who had been on the apathy side for so long, and then finally they're stepping up to the plate and they're saying, actually, our way, we weren't apathetic, our way is actually cleaner. It's like, how could you even be thinking this? But
well, don't they say you're never going to move those people anyway? Like, if you're on the spectrum, the folks that are always on the lower end of the spectrum that absolutely disagree with you are never going to get to the full. That we're always targeting the folks in the middle, and we don't need to worry about the folks that are so far along because that's the choir, right? You already know who they are. It's the folks in the middle that we have to move. So maybe those folks that are making up the false, they're just there to be stubborn, and they're going to disagree no matter what. I
think that's exactly how one of my friends responded when I showed that article to him. I was like, what do you even say to these people? He's like, nothing. They're not the target audience.
If you know the name of that spectrum or the curve, please correct me there if you've heard that before.
I'm not aware.
I'm not sure. I get the conceptual you're talking about.
Gaussian distribution. I don't think the shape matters.
We talk about that when we talk about community-based social marketing, and that's one of the fields that I draw on a lot for sustainability, is how to make things, I think I said this phrase earlier, is fun, easy, and popular. And if we can make the practice of whatever we're trying to get people to do fun, easy, and popular, then people are more likely to do it, right? Because there's no apathy needed. Like, it was easy, or it was fun, it was social. So kind of sounds like a cheap date or something, right? Fun, easy, and popular.
I definitely struggle with overwhelm more than I struggle with apathy. I'll get all my groceries from the store, and I start putting them away, and they all got these little plastic safety things all over them. And I'm like, I can't not make micro trash as a person living in the United States.
Yeah.
So that bums me out, as I often feel overwhelmed, and then I don't behave like I should behave. Right. Or I know I should behave anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely can be overwhelming, but I think the small strides that we can, every small stride is helpful. Or if you can pull those people in the middle of the spectrum over, I think that's a win of sorts. We're actually out of time for this segment, so we'll need to take another quick commercial break, and then we will be back with Outside of Science to wrap up the show. Stay tuned.
The UMSL Pre-Med Society is a student organization to help all pre-medical students explore their future endeavors. We host events all semester for students to indulge in the knowledge of medicine. Plenty of events are available for students to attend and familiarize themselves with their future career path, such as blood drives, spokespersons, speaking with medical students or residents, and more. The UMSL Pre-Med Society would help pre-med students at UMSL to explore their dream and engage with other individuals within the same field. Search Pre-Med Society on Try and Connect for more information.
Okay, and we're back, but we're going to have one final comment from Katy Mike to end on a more positive note for the environmental activism movement. So go ahead.
Sure. So I just wanted to throw in the phrase of doom and bloom. Instead of doom and gloom, maybe if we think about trying to make a better future, maybe just working with a better present. This idea of blooming right here, right now, wherever we are with whatever resources we have to create the best we can right now, instead of worrying about the idea of the future, because there's a good chance that we're going to have to be very, very resilient in the face of collapse. So just trying to bloom here, right now. That's from Professor Jem Bendel.
Okay. Nicely said. Okay, now we'll transition.
Doom and bloom.
Doom and bloom. Fantastic. And now it's time for Outside of Science, where we talk about things, you guessed it, outside of science to prove that we are in fact not robots that do work and research 24/7. So it's been about a month since the last show. I'm hoping we've done something outside of science of the four of us. Have we?
Yeah, it is plant swap season.
Sweet. What have you been swapping?
Oh, I've been going to the native plant swaps. Did one this past weekend. Got me some bee balm.
Nice.
Brought some cone flowers and some coral honeysuckle. I love plant swap season.
Nice. How about you, Webster?
Well, I went to see that talk last week, which was awesome. And then this past weekend, we had a ballroom dance performance, which was wonderful.
Nice.
And then I had ballroom dance coaching. Like there's this big out-of-town coach who comes to town. He normally throws his own dance competitions, but he'll come to town because he's friends with our instructors. And he gives us really detailed, fine technique coaching, which was really fun today.
Nice. Do you have a competition coming up? I know we've talked about this last
no,
fall.
I try to avoid the competitions. We feel like we're not ready for that yet.
Okay.
Maybe almost, but.
Okay. I just like to check in because I know we talked about it before. So, what have I been doing? The big thing is 2 weeks ago I drove to Omaha, Nebraska, and saw one of my best friends from high school, and we went to the Fall Out Boy concert, and it was totally awesome. I needed this cut loose getaway for like 48 hours because spring break I was here taking care of animals for lab and just organizing guest speaker stuff for the biology grad students and some other things. I was like, I didn't get a spring break. I just need something. So that was like my moment.
Did you have the post-concert depression?
I did not. I'm glad you ask about this every time I go to a concert. I have been pretty much exclusively listening to Fall Out Boy since I got back from the concert. Nice. I heard some songs I hadn't heard before. It's like, oh, we're going to check out some other albums and stuff. So I have like a good euphoric feeling, but I didn't really crash from it. Also, just a lot of like emo goth stuff that I haven't seen since high school. I was like, oh man, I remember this from like 15 years ago. That's what I've been doing. That's a big thing I've done. How about you, Katy Mike?
Okay, well, 2 weeks ago, I got to go to the convention center for the Oddities and Curiosities Expo.
Ooh.
There was a lot of emo and goth.
Okay.
Because cosplay was encouraged and a lot of folks were dressed up. And I did not take the taxidermy class. I want to now, though. I'm interested in that. I think that could be fun. But not yet. I'll have to find somebody else that can teach me how to do that. I did save a skull. I'm pretty excited about that. And then the next big event that I'm looking forward to that I have to plug is this weekend. It's Earth Day. So if you don't have plans already this weekend, Earth Day Festival in Forest Park.
Yeah, both Saturday and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And the Harris Ecology Center and the UMSL Sustainability will be there under the Muni Pavilion.
Yes.
So you can come see perhaps some dead birds.
Yes, we'll have some birds and some bees, and we'll have a whiteboard writing. You can basically ask whatever you want about our research. So if you want to hear about bumblebees or flying squirrels from my past, from me or any other grad students that are there, come on down. It should be a good time. And there's lots of food trucks and lots of cool sustainability booths and green initiative stuff you can learn about there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sustainability is bringing the selfie backdrop, so you can get your selfies made.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah, I just joined the Earth Day board, so I'm very excited about this. So I have to plug it.
Awesome. Very awesome. All right, any last things we want to plug or talk about for Outside of Science?
And then after the Earth Day Festival next week, there will be all kinds of events happening on campus from UMSL Sustainability. Look for us on Friday. So we'll be planting a tree for Arbor Day, and that'll be fun. It'll be at the state tree, a dogwood.
Sweet. All right. Well, that is going to wrap up another episode of That Science and Nature Show. Thank you so much for listening this week. Thank you, as always, to Webster and Becky for joining me. And thank you, Katy Mike, for being our awesome guest this week. It was awesome to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back if you're interested in joining us.
Would love it.
Man, it's been a while since I've done the spiel. What else do I say? You can find past episodes of That Science and Nature Show on Spotify and Amazon. Until next week, you've been listening to That Science and Nature Show. My name is Jeremy Howard, and we are out.